Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith, and today you are watching something a little bit different, not that different. We're going to see how it goes. Can I fit this together into a video? If you're watching this, then yes. Today, and over the next kind of little while, probably the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be making this lovely dragon scale fabric, which I purchased on the internet. It's rather lovely, into a skirt for my wife for her birthday. And her birthday was in August, but I wanted to make the skirt where I could actually take her measurements instead of the practice skirt I did, which did fit her, but it definitely wasn't done to her measurements, and it was a bit of a measuring other skirts I know she owns and likes and working out from there. So now I can measure her and check what she wants and what kind of pockets she wants and so such. We're making the skirt, and I thought that while I did it, I would talk to you about some of my favourite dragon-y books, and I would take you through the process. This is by no means a tutorial. Please don't use this as a tutorial for how to make a skirt. There are much better sewing people out there on the internet, but I'll link all the stuff that I can in the description. But yeah, I've been sewing for about a year and a half now, and I would say I'm at a point where I can confidently make things that are not super weird to wear. I would say I wear at least one thing a week, if not more, that I've made myself, which is really cool and exactly where I wanted to get to in my kind of sewing journey. So that's very exciting. But yeah, definitely not good enough at either sewing or filmmaking to make an adequate sewing tutorial. So this is just a bit of fun. We're going to talk about dragon books because dragons are some of my favourite things in fantasy and have been for a very long time, which you'll probably see across the course of this video. So the first step in making something that does not look like actual trash, if you are doing things properly, is washing and ironing your fabric before you even start. So I have actually already washed this, which is why it's looking a little bit free, but I have not yet ironed it. But before we get to ironing, I'm going to talk to you about the first dragon-y book on this list. It's Prairie of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I think this is probably one of the ones you're expecting to see on this list. I don't expect any of these are going to be surprises. This is Prairie of the Orange Tree. This edition looks super duper shiny because it's the gold spray edition with the sprayed edges, but it's just got some plastic on it, that's why. So the Prairie of the Orange Tree, or Priory, came out in February of 2019, which would have been pre-booktube, so it hasn't got as much mention as it probably should on this channel, although I have had 2 copies behind me for quite some time. I will say I haven't read this since before that. I read an advanced copy and I haven't reread it since. I would really love to reread it, so I'm debating doing a bit of a buddy read. Yeah, if you'd like to join in with that, then come to Discord and we'll chat dates and things. Since it's been a good long while since I've read this, I'm a little bit rusty on the details, but let's say if you like epic, long chunky fantasy books that have a lot of detailed world building. One of the things that I really picked up on was how much Samantha Shannon has thought about how this world functions and why things are the way they are. This is definitely one. There's court politics, there's intrigue, and there's dragons. Yay! It would really suck if they made a book with a dragon on the front cover and then there weren't dragons in it. I would be very angry. Oh, and it's got sapphic romance. I forgot to say. Sapphic romance, yay! Samantha Shannon's other series, The Bone Season, or Scion, I think it's called. I can't actually remember what the series is called. It's very different from that, so if you read that and you didn't get on with that, I would say this is different enough that you could give this a go. One of the things that will feature a lot on this list, which I think you'll probably pick up on, is my love of Dragon Rider books, very specifically. And I think that's a combination of my love of wanting to ride a dragon, which is a big thing, but also you get training montages in dragon riding books. There's a lot of training, there's a lot of learning how to fly. Friggin' love How to Train Your Dragon, the film. It's great for that. This has that. Yay! Yay dragon riding and learning to dragon ride and being a dragon rider. Huzzah! Not every character, it's just one aspect of this world, but yes, very, very good. While I wouldn't say this book has as much of a focus on dragons as some of the other books on this list, it was well worth mentioning, and I do like talking about it. This is mostly also just to encourage me to actually set up a buddy read at some point. To ironing. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to set up filming ironing. I'm basically in pyjamas from the waist down. So, while you watch me do some highly entertaining ironing on this really too small ironing board, which I should definitely upgrade at some point, I'm going to tell you about a short story, because I read a fair few short stories, not oodles and oodles, but a fair few. I then forget to tell you all about them, so I do actually have a review up for this. This is Escape Pod. I read this late last year, and one of the stories that's really stuck with me is one of the ones about dragons, which is odd because this is a sci-fi, but this is by N.K. Jemisin, who is obviously fantastic in every way, and you should read all of her books. This story is called Give Me Cornbread or Give Me Death, and this is about a world in which dragon creatures have been kind of genetically engineered to attack minorities in this world and keep them downtrodden and so such, and it's definitely not a metaphor for anything at all. No, certainly no. Ha 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 ha. And it's really fantastic, and I definitely recommend it if you want something to read that takes this idea of dragons and makes it more metaphorical but also in a kind of a sci-fi sense. Yeah, I would say it's well worth reading. I don't know if you can read the story in any form other than in Escape Pod, but to be honest, Escape Pod has a great set of authors in it anyway, so that would be a good thing to read. Okay, ironing done. Back to me. My original plan for this video was to film one of these like talking about a book segments every time I did something to the skirt, but then Katie was in a meeting earlier and I wanted to sew and I didn't want to record her meeting by accident because this microphone will pick that up because I don't have an office door at the moment. Instead, you'll have to kind of treat this more of a series of sewing vignettes accompanied by me talking about books with dragons in, and I think we'll be okay. So, as I fully reveal the fact that I'm wearing pyjamas and chicken socks under this rather glamorous attire, I'm going to cut out my quote-unquote pattern pieces. I'm not really following a pattern in this project, I'm just sort of making it up. I know how skirts work, there are a lot of rectangles. I vaguely tried to follow a tutorial because I was doing an elastic back skirt, which I'd not done before. I ended up kind of throwing all of that away and just making a good guess, which will come back to bite me in the butt later, like an angry dragon, but it's mostly fine. So watch me cut these bits and bobs out as I talk to you about Aliette de Bodard, who is not a book but an author, but she has written a number of books that contain dragons, one of which is her Dominion of the Fallen series. I do have a review out for this. This is a trilogy that is set in a post-apocalyptic, sort of, if the apocalypse were a war in heaven, Paris, which also contains dragons. And she has another novella, which is called In the Vanisher's Palace, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, in which the beast is in fact a dragon. It is also a sapphic Beauty and the Beast retelling, in case you wanted even more excitement. Aliette de Bodard's writing is not for everyone. I have friends who've loved it. I have friends who have really not got on with it, shall we say. I personally really enjoy her writing. I think it's fantastic, and I really love her dragons. They draw a lot from her Vietnamese heritage, and I think that they work really well. The Beauty and the Beast retelling in particular is a little bit of a Marmite retelling. Some people really go on with it, some people find it a bit squicky. Up to you, really. I found it a very sweet romance when I read it. And I love the idea of taking the beast character and turning it into a dragon. I think that's just very smart. Okay, on with the next step. I have more things to talk about, and I actually bought books specifically for this video. This video was an excuse for me to purchase some things I've been wanting for a while. This next series is kind of two series, or a duology and a standalone book, and this is the Seraphina series by Rachel Hartman. Now, I did buy these secondhand in hardback, and they're good fun. This has a holographic spine. They don't match. We're gonna live with it, it's fine. It was an exciting excuse to buy hardbacks. Anyway, I should tell you about the books, actually. Let's do Seraphina. This is a duology. It originally came out in, let's find out, I don't actually know, 2012. Look at that, that's so much fun. What's fun about these dragons is they can transform into a human form. They're Sarantras. It's basically like the dragons kind of like crumple down into a human form, and that's how they do a lot of scholarship, because dragons in their dragon form don't really feel emotions, and there's a lot of stuff to do with dragons being very logical, maths interested in things and people and rules and structure and so such, whereas humans are obviously not. And in this book we have Seraphina, who is half dragon, and she should not exist. Nobody should be doing the do with a dragon, but obviously they have been, and Seraphina is a product of this. So she has to hide her half dragon identity while also bonding with her dragon uncle and going on adventures and falling in love with princes, and heaps of stuff happens. And book 2, Shadow Scale, is the follow-on from that. It's a slightly separate adventure that draws on some of the stuff from the first book, but this one is broadly speaking like a mystery politicsy book, and this is more of like an adventure, we must defeat the baddie kind of book. And then, if you read those and you loved them, you can also read Tess of the Road, which is a companion novel. It features a character from the previous series and the other type of dragon, which are called a Quickle, which are like the smaller, they're more interested in mechanics kind of dragons, and they're great fun. I really like this series. I first encountered them on probably the library ebook app, I expect. Read them, devoured them, loved them, had a great time. The second book features a lot of queer identities, which I really appreciated, even more so as I grow older. I just think, yeah, this book was doing some cool stuff. And yes, I think the third book, the companion novel, is less dragony and more about womanhood, I suppose. This is a very solid stack of books, and there's some really good dragon content in this. No dragon riders, but just a great concept of dragons as intelligent beings. I'll just share with you where I'm up to with the skirt because the camera's on. I have a waistband with some elastic attached that I'm gonna work out later, and I have what is essentially a tube with pockets. Pocket tube. So my next step is gonna be, I need to gather the front of the skirt, and I need to attach the waistband at the back and sort of fold it all over, slightly better, fold it all over, reassess where I'm at, and work out some of the seams and things then, I think, is my plan. So I'm going to do a bit more sewing. I will film some of it, maybe do some voiceover stuff if my microphone arrives, don't know. And then I will be back and we will talk about another Dragony book/series. So yes, as I painstakingly hand sew this, because I'm not very good at doing the various techniques that you can do this by machine, it's just nice to stop and pause and be a bit meditative for a time. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the Memoirs of Lady Isabella Trent, or A Natural History of Dragons. I think you probably saw this coming if you've been watching the channel for a while. This is a fantastic series. 5-book series, I believe. I am currently rereading them and I cannot remember what order they go in. But yeah, 5-book series with a companion novel that follows sort of much later down the line. And the first set of books are written as, unsurprisingly, the Memoirs of Lady Isabella Trent, who is by the point of writing her memoirs, a very famous dragon naturalist. Sounds great, doesn't it? Yes, it is great. In the first book, she's a child, obviously, and she is sent into town to find a husband. And the first book is her first kind of expedition. And then each book is kind of another separate contained adventure, but we do follow on her life. Some elements that continue between books. There's some common themes, some common plot threads and so such. I really love these books. I think that they are interesting and you have to read them with a somewhat critical mindset. I think that's important. And I don't think that the book necessarily spells that out enough. And that's probably my main criticism of them, because they are written as the memoirs of this person who's growing up in kind of the Regency, Victorian era, the past, and it's not Earth, but there's a lot of kind of allegories. It's very much an alternate Earth. So instead of England, it's called Skirland. Instead of Africa, it's called Eriga. That kind of thing. Our character is visiting those places and is a lady of this time writing memoirs. So there's a fair amount of exoticism in the book. But what I do like about it is quite often Lady Trent will reference previous writings and be like, this was really bad of me to write this. I was just writing it as like sensationalized travel writing. Now I think this. And I think that's really interesting. There are some things in it where you're kind of like, oh, that feels like a problematic take. But because it's deliberately doing that, it makes sense. Anyway, it's exciting. There's a lot of stuff to do with like dragon biology. There's a lot to do with lady scholarship, which I always enjoy, and women supporting and helping other women. And basically like every single time she goes to study dragons and ends up embroiled in a mystery or a political adventure or something else, and also making massive discoveries about dragons. It's a great time. I think that my favourite is probably actually the first one. I really like the first one. But having said that, I haven't reread them in a very long time. I'm rereading them at the moment. Each one I'm like, oh, I like this one a lot. Oh, I like this one even more. Ooh, and I know that I can actually show you one of them. Turning Darkness into Light. I know that I love that to pieces. In terms of like dragonness, they are very much animals in this series. Sort of the same way as we'd write about, I don't know, big cats, big lizards. They are treated that way. They are not intelligent beings as they are in other books, but I think that almost makes it like even more interesting. There's loads of stuff to do with the taxonomy of dragons and how we decide what is and isn't a dragon, what's a cousin of a dragon. The book that I'm currently working on, which I'm probably going to put on an audiobook as I work my way around this waistband, they're deciding if sea snakes, if basilisks are dragons or not, which is great fun. If you like that kind of academic look at dragons, I would say this is definitely a series to read. I think they're really good fun. I think they're really entertaining books. The audiobooks are fantastic. If you're thinking about picking it up, I wouldn't say no to you picking up the audiobook. I don't know why I would say no to anything. They're probably one of my favourite things that is on this list. I mean, these are all good books, but some of them I'm not going to be necessarily recommending to you as much as others. In fact, shall we talk about that now while I continue to work my way around? I think we should. One of the books that really got me into dragons was Christopher Paolini's Inheritance Cycle series. So Aragon, eldest, Brisingr, Inheritance. There's a lot that can be said about this series. A lot has been said by a lot of people. You were 15 when you wrote this, and it's not great. It's just Star Wars with dragons. There's Aragon is just dragon with an E at the start. It took me an embarrassingly long time to realise that fact. I'm just including them on this list because I think I read Aragon when I was a teenager, probably about 13 or 14. And Aragon itself took me a really long time to read, but I can remember I must have been about 16 when Inheritance came out, and I was so excited to read the end of the series. I was like fully invested in that point, and I can just remember being so excited about it. Like, I can still recount bits of the Elvish by heart, or the ancient language I should say, by heart. I still remember heaps of it. At one point I very nearly got an Inheritance Cycle tattoo. Like, thank goodness I didn't. Thank you past me for being too much of a chicken to do that, but yeah, that nearly happened. So I wanted to bring it up just as kind of like I'm aware that this book exists. I have a lot of nostalgia for them. That's why I keep them around. That's why I reread them on occasion. I often do the audiobooks. I don't necessarily think they're things that I would necessarily recommend reading, but I really do like the dragons in them. I think that they're very cool. And again, the idea of being a dragon rider really appeals. And when you're 14, the idea of being a dragon rider and the chosen one and being chosen by a dragon to ride the dragon and the dragon being your best friend really appealed. And honestly still appeals. Like, if a dragon wants to hatch for me and be my best friend and we can save the world together, I mean, I'm available if any dragons want to turn up. That would be great. Please ignore the fact that I've made a skirt out of the skin of one of your friends. It's probably fine. Well, that made it about, 15 centimetres of stitching. I'm going to be here for a while, so I shall say goodbye, and we'll check in when I've done a bit more of this, and we'll talk about another dragony book, shall we? This is going to echo, but I cannot close the bathroom door because it's so warm. I need the window open. This is a seam ripper. This is what you use when you mess up, which I have done. Not drastically, like, it's looking great, I will say. Like, you really can't tell in this, but this is definitely too big. It fits me, but it's a little bit loose, and because it's elastic, if you put stuff in the pockets, then the skirt will fall down. And this isn't for me, this is my wife, who, while we have a very similar waist size, does not have my glorious hips, so it would definitely fall off her. So I'm going to unpick a little bit, and basically I'm just going to shorten the elastic, because that's the quickest way of doing this, and I don't want to get bored. So I'm going to unpick this, and I'm going to talk, while I do that, about Chorus of Dragons. Yes, you knew it was coming. I have got a video up on this series as a whole. Well, no, I have a video up on the first 3 books, and I have since read the 4th book and I haven't talked about it yet, and it's been so long that I need to reread it again before I can talk about it. So I think I'm just going to wait till book 5 is out. This is another one of those books that is not strictly about dragons, but does feature them, which is why it's on this list. And I've pulled up the 2nd book in the series, Name of All Things, because this is the one where the dragons really come into their own. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil the series for you, but one of the things I love about the dragons in this book is that they're really, really big and really, really dangerous. And each book kind of, not each book in turn, but gradually we're learning more and more about them and some of the implications of them, the reasons they exist and are the way they are. And generally speaking, the dragons are fairly not fond of humans, and not fond of shenanigans, which there are many shenanigans in this series. While this isn't a series where I'm like, oh, you'll really love specifically the dragons and you'll read it just for the dragons. I mean, maybe, I don't know you, but I think that it is a really good series, and it also happens to have dragons in it, which is always a selling point in my book. In fact, most of this book is spent, it's complicated to explain the narrative structure. It's in a video, you can watch it, but some of this book is spent hiding out from a dragon that is causing some mischief, by which I mean a lot of people are dying. I'm trying to think of all the other reasons you should read this book, but I should have rewatched my videos so I could refresh, and that's what you should go and do now. I'm gonna go sew up this elastic and then redo all of my stitching around here so it's fixed, and then when we come back, assuming that's all gone well, it's time for hemming and finishing all the seams that I couldn't be bothered to finish before because I got stressed about whether the waistband was going to work. So now I've made more work for myself because it's how I am. I finished the seams on the inside, mostly. She says pulling out a huge chunk of thread that definitely isn't attached to anything. I've bound off the edges of the pockets because I couldn't handle seaming them any other way. I should have French seamed them, it's fine. And I have pinned up the hem. I had went through a phase of trying to even out the hem. It got very stressful. Opted for just, I'm going to make it a hem, it's a gathered skirt. You're not going to be able to tell if the hem's a little bit uneven. I'm going to talk about, it's just the side of the frame. Boop. Phoenix Extravagant, while I get my needle threaded and start hand doing this hem. You can do hems by machine. I've done them many a time, but they do just look a little bit nicer when you take the time to do them by hand. Don't do that, get scissors. We've talked a lot about various different kinds of dragons alive. Have I talked about any dead dragons? I'm trying to think if there are any, like, bone dragons. If there are bone dragons, please tell me, I would like to hear about them. But I have 2 more things to talk to you about, and one of them is mecha dragons. We're talking about Phoenix Extravagant here by Yoon-Ha Lee. This came out, I want to say last year? I have a review video up for this as well. I review a lot of dragon books. So it's set in a world that is a alternate universe representation analogous to the Korean occupation of Japan. And in this world we have our main character Jebi, who is a non-binary character, so tick, tick, tick for that, who just wants to be a painter, and they take the kind of imperial art exam and instead get offered a job as I'm going to remember what their wording is, because I've not read this in a while. They get recruited by the Ministry of Armour to paint the mystical sigils that animate the occupying government's automaton soldiers. So, in this world, these automata brought to life by specific kinds of paint. That's a bit of a important plot point, I shall say. And those sigils have to be painted on by someone. In this case, they're painted on by Jebi. But Jebi, in this scenario, learns a lot more about the government and what they're up to than they perhaps intended. And within that, it's on the blurb, so I don't think it counts as a spoiler, decides to steal their giant dragon automata. This is not a book that everyone will love, particularly the ending. I have a lot of thoughts about the ending. I will say, having read this and read Nine Fox Gambit, I like this a lot more. I really enjoy this book. You get less of the dragon than the blurb and the cover might lead you to believe. A lot more of the book is about Jebi and uncovering the government secrets and such, and I guess the idea of loyalty and being a fairly ordinary person but still witnessing a corrupt regime, I guess. Those are all things I would describe being part of this, but it does have a mecha dragon, so if that's something that you need in your life, that's a book you could go for. I did also want to talk about Rob and Hobb very briefly, and I don't think this is a spoiler based on you would be spoiled if you just saw the front covers of the books, but fair warning, I'm going to talk a bit about the events of the Live Ships trilogy and the Rainwaters quartet. So I will there'll be skips somewhere, and you can skip over this if you don't want to. Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb has dragons in. Aloof dragons is probably how I'd describe it. It's kind of like if the vanity of Christopher Paolini's dragons went like to a whole other level. And I'm not saying that the two are directly inspired by each other in any way, shape or form, but in terms of like dragons, if sentient, would be like tippity top of the food chain, pretty rad. And these dragons really do know that fact, even though they aren't necessarily all that amazing all the time. And I really enjoy that. And again, this is another series where the dragons are not the main part of the plot, unless you are reading Rain Wilds, in which case, even the other ones, yeah, they are a fairly significant part of the plot. There's other stuff happening as well. And I have to say that one of the things I really enjoyed was the dragons as kind of part of the whole of the realm of the Elderlings, especially now that I've finished all of it. The way that they play into everything. Both fascinating and entertaining. People building relationships with dragons, which is always interesting. And yeah, I thought that it was some good dragon time, suffice to say. I think I'm going to switch over to listening to an audiobook that is about dragons, so it feels appropriate, and just work my way around this hem for a little while. And then I think the next time you see me will be the reveals, assuming I can shoot some reveals. We'll see. It did in fact take me a few days to pluck up the courage to go and film these reveal shots because it did involve going outside and that's where the people are. But when you make something for somebody else, the first thing you have to do is put it on yourself and take it for a walk outside on one of the rainiest days of the year so far. Right? Please enjoy these wonderful shots of me aimlessly walking around places where I've cut out all the bits at the end where I go to retrieve my camera. If you're a person who makes things, hopefully you too will appreciate the sheer joy of wearing something that you have made in a public place and it not completely falling apart. I always appreciate it. I've had a really good time with this project. Yes, it's probably the most basic thing you can sew in the entire world. Maybe a pillowcase, maybe. But I had a wonderful time. This is a really lovely present to give to my wife now that I have worn it around everywhere. And I'm genuinely just very chuffed. Oh yeah. And it has pockets. Welcome back. I forgot to film an outro yesterday, so you get me the next day. Hello. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video. I'm really pleased with how the skirt came out. Katie is as well. It has been gifted. It is no longer mine. I cannot tramp around the fields wearing it, though I am very tempted. I have actually already started planning my next sewing project that is book related, so stay tuned if you're interested in that. Comment below, what dragon books did I forget to mention? Which ones should I definitely read? I realised I completely forgot to talk about Memoirs, so there's that. I know that one's on the list. What else is there? Plonk them in the comments. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do give us a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. There's more where that came from, I guess is what I'm saying there. You can also come hang out on Discord, follow me on social media. We have good chats about books and other things. I'm trying to be better about updating on in-progress things, or that's my goal anyway. So yeah, come hang out there. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Welcome back. Oh, a bit wonky, aren't you, babe? Da-da-da. So I currently have, not you, you are a piece of scrap fabric. Pin slightly further away from my fingers, please. I put my needle down. Where did it was inside City of Lies. Some good, I just said good ass dragon time, but that sounds somewhat sketchy. I forgot to film an intro.